Hello, hello. Welcome back to Talk with Sharifa. If you're new to my channel, welcome. Please check out my How I Became a Targeted Individual summary and or full story. And the links to those videos are located in the description box as well as in the comment section. In this video, guys, I just wanted to briefly show you all some statistics as it relates to Asperger's and ADHD, because I've been talking about that a lot in my recent videos, and talking about that overlap and also the fact that that's a common comorbidity. So, meaning those two disorders can often co occur in an individual. And in recent years, they even created a new manual for diagnosing these disorders, because in the 90s, they were using the DS4 module or manual. And in that module, you could not diagnose a person with ADHD and Asperger's. But in 2013, upon further studies and research, they actually came to realize that both of those mental diagnoses, excuse me, whoa, I'm stammering all over my word, can often co-occur in the same individual. And so they realized that it was actually a common comorbidity. So I just wanted to show y'all statistics. I have been sharing them in my videos. I talked about that 2/3 of ADHD patients that also have Asperger's, but I didn't actually show you statistics of how many Americans have ADHD versus how many Americans have Asperger's. So I just wanted to show you guys that real quickly. Sorry for the food. This is my photo album, and I like food, guys. I've talked about this in my prior videos. I love taking pictures of yummy, delicious foods and writing down recipes and stuff. So that's what's going on there. That's a deep dish pizza. But anyways, I want to show you guys the statistics. So as you can see, ADHD, I typed into the search, what percentage of Americans have ADHD? And what came up was that ADHD isn't just a childhood disorder. About 4% of American adults over the age of 18 deal with ADHD on a daily basis. So 4% of the American population and adults have ADHD, right? So then I typed in the same thing for Asperger's, and you can see an estimated 5 million and change, or 2.21% of adults have Asperger's. So that lines up with that statistic that Mom on the Spectrum read, where she said that 2/3 of people with ADHD also have Asperger's. It lines up, the statistics line up. So as you can see, a large majority of people with ADHD also have Asperger's. So this is why I wanted to show you all and not just talk about it, because I know for me at least, I'm a visual learner. So when I hear something, sometimes I can learn, but when I see it and I hear it, then it makes sense to me. So you can see that the statistics line up. Also, I talked about the fact that when I went to school for the first time in my early 20s, when I was in community college, I did not use my ADHD as a tool to help me. I didn't know that I could use that to get accommodations. So I wasn't able to get those accommodations. I've always just kind of pushed my way and duked it out in school and made it work for me. And it's always been difficult, but I've been able to push myself through. And I believe it's because of the Asperger's. I believe the Asperger's, the routine, the scheduling, the writing lists, that is what helped to offset my ADHD. And so I talked about the fact that when I was in school for the first time in my early 20s, I was doing okay, right? Because I was having struggles with math. I had this math course that I failed 3 times in a row. And even after failing that math class 3 times in a row, I had a 2.7 GPA, which is a B minus, 80 to 82%, right? That was my GPA. This is how this is just to show you how much this disorder can affect somebody. I'm not only just showing you how Asperger's can offset ADHD when you have both of them, but then also showing you how ADHD can really affect somebody, because once I was able to go to school for the second time and the math was no longer in the equation, pun intended, and I was taking only English courses focusing on my special interest, which is an overlapping symptom, by the way, guys. People with Asperger's and ADHD, they have special interests. So they have things that they really enjoy that they can hyper focus on. And so for me, reading, writing, English has always been a special interest for me. You know, I showed you all in my Asperger videos my book collection, and I showed you the text between my older sister and I where we were discussing how many books I had when I lived in Tallahassee. You know, I could have had a library. I had that many books. But anyway, so I just wanted to show you guys that not only can Asperger's offset ADHD in a way, because I was able to maintain a 2.7 GPA despite having courses that I did not enjoy, you know, and that I had trouble focusing on, mainly math. I still had a B minus GPA because I believe my Asperger's came in clutch, you know, and offset my ADHD. But then just also showing you how ADHD can really affect someone, you know, because then when I didn't have those courses that I wasn't interested in anymore, in the picture, in the equation, you know, and I went back to school for the second time and I was able to hyper focus on my special interest, I had a whole 10% jump in GPA. So I went from an 80 to 82% average to a 90% average. I had a 3.5. I graduated magna cum laude. So that's a big deal, you know? So I just wanted to show y'all the statistics and also tie it in with my own personal experience. Anyways, this is not a long video. I just wanted to show you all that. So I'll talk to you all in the next one. Peace out. Hey guys, I just wanted to add this clip to the prior clip because again, it's discussing that correlation between Asperger's and ADHD. And it's also exploring a topic that I mentioned in prior videos where I talked about the fact that Bill Gates and Elon Musk have Asperger's. You know, I never looked into whether or not they had ADHD also. You know, as I said, my prior videos, I was more so focused on the Asperger's because I already knew I had ADHD. I've known since middle school, but the Asperger's is more of a recent development. So this is why you'll see that I was talking about Asperger's prevalently before I started focusing on ADHD as well. And actually, those videos were deleted. Remember, I told y'all some of my videos got deleted. So I had way more videos up about Asperger's. Now you only see 5 videos. And at first you'll see I was just talking about Asperger's, and then I started also talking about ADHD. So I didn't actually look into whether or not Bill Gates or Elon Musk had ADHD. But I wanted to do that because I know that I talked about the fact that computer or tech is a common special interest amongst neurodivergent people. So people that have ADHD, Asperger's, or both. That's a common special interest, you know, because computers are fun, you know, video games are fun. You know, that's something that can keep your attention, you know, and for some reason with the neurodivergent brain, that's something that we enjoy. You know, with Asperger's, with ADHD, excuse me, you know, there's that lack of dopamine. So basically, this is why we can lose focus on things we're not interested in. With the typical person, when they're working on things that they might not find fascinating or interesting, they'll still get it done because they know that there's a reward once they finish that task. But with someone that has ADHD, regardless of whether or not there's a reward at the end of finishing the task, if the task isn't something that the ADHD person finds interesting, they can lose focus or motivation because that lack of dopamine is there. You know, there's literally a connectivity issue in the brain of people that have ADHD. You know, there's something going on with the frontal lobe of the brain. So it's interesting to see how that works because with Asperger's, it's also a neurological disorder that has to do with the way the brain is wired. And so for some reason, those two disorders have a lot of overlapping symptoms. And not only do they overlap, but they often can co-occur, i.e. comorbidity, in an individual. So I think that's really cool, and I just wanted to look into it a little more. So I was just sitting there and I said, wait a minute, let me look up Bill Gates. You know, I know he has Asperger's. You know, I shared that in my Asperger's Part 1 video that I created. You know, that video I shared 25 most famous people with Asperger's. Bill Gates is one of them. I don't know if he was in that video. I'm actually trying to remember if they mentioned him in that video. Even if they didn't, I definitely mentioned him in my prior videos, Bill Gates. But Bill Gates has Asperger's and Elon Musk has Asperger's. And I just said, well, let me look up and see if they have ADHD. Because remember, I shared that statistic from Mom on the Spectrum, where she was talking about the fact that 2/3 of people with ADHD also have Asperger's. I mentioned it again in the prior clip, that this one is going to be connected to. So that's a common co-occurrence. They even changed the DS4, as I mentioned, the whole module that they used back in the day to diagnose these mental diagnoses. They changed it up because before they actually thought that ADHD and Asperger's could not coexist in an individual. And then in 2013, upon more research and more studies and more cases, they realized that they were completely wrong and that it's actually a common coexisting comorbidity. So I just think it's cool, because I'm one of those individuals. I have ADHD and I have Asperger's. And I really, like I said in my prior clips, I'm grateful for the fact that I have the two, because although it has been a difficult life for me, at least in the social arena, I think the Asperger's stepped in and, like I said, offset the ADHD. But then I also think the ADHD kind of offset the Asperger's a little bit as well. Anyways, let me show y'all what I found because I don't want this video to be too long. So I looked up Elon Musk first and I just typed in, did Elon Musk have ADHD? Or does, not did, does. So this is what I found. It says, he has stated he has Asperger's, but I see a lot of ADHD traits in his nature too. Quite common in people with extremely high intelligence. Musk's phenomenal work drive is inspiring, if beyond my personal comprehension. Here's a great place to learn more about him at Wait But Why. And I keep hearing that too, that when you see the co-occurrence of these two disorders, it usually has to do with higher intelligence, but I don't know necessarily if it means that you have a higher IQ, because specifically with ADHD, I've looked that up. There's no correlation between IQ and ADHD. They said that oftentimes you can find individuals that have ADHD that have a higher IQ. If you check out my alcoholism and ADHD part 2 video, where I'm sharing the clip of the med student. As a matter of fact, I think he's at this point now a psychologist, if I'm not mistaken. But he was talking about the fact that he's dealt with a lot of clients that have ADHD, and oftentimes they have a higher IQ. And so what they deal with is something called shame, because they don't understand why they can't do simple things that they're seeing their peers doing when their brain is more than capable of doing it. So he was mentioning that, and I was like, okay, well, let me look this up. Let me see if there's really a correlation between ADHD and higher IQ. And from what I'm seeing, there is no correlation. So in other words, the disability has nothing to do with your IQ level. But oftentimes you can see that individuals that have ADHD have a higher IQ. But with Asperger's in particular, they do find that people with Asperger's tend to have a higher IQ, which still ties and correlates into ADHD, because remember the statistic that 2/3 of people with ADHD have Asperger's. So that would mean that majority of the people that have ADHD also have Asperger's. So if that correlation of higher IQ is there for the Asperger's, then that means that those 2/3 of people that also have Asperger's likely have a higher IQ. I don't even know if it's really a high IQ thing more than it is a creativity thing. I think because the way that we learn is different and the way that we perceive is different and the way that our brain is wired is different, I think that allows for creativity and innovation. And so I think that's where the word genius comes into play. Not to mention that some of the people with both of these disorders actually do have a higher IQ. I was just looking it up. Albert Einstein had a 160. Bill Gates, they said, has like a 157, something like that. And Elon Musk a 155. So they literally do have a higher IQ as well. If I'm speaking about myself, my IQ is higher as well, but not like that. I'm not like no genius, at least not in the realm of IQ. I do have a slightly above average IQ, but nothing major. About a month ago, I took an IQ test and I scored a 112. And when I was in my early 20s, I took an IQ test and I scored a 120. So just averaging it out, and I don't know if I'm regressing or what's going on, But just averaging it out from 112 to 120, I'm going to assume that my IQ falls somewhere in between. So I'm going to say I probably have like a 115 or something like that. And apparently that's slightly above average. 112 is slightly above average. If you get into the realm of 115 and 120, you're getting higher above average, but it's still in the average realm. So it's not like I'm a genius as far as IQ goes, but I am slightly above average. I even looked it up. I was like, well, let me see what's going on here with that. This was my 112 that I got a month ago. Dara Karita is my middle name, right? So I looked it up and I said, is 120 a good IQ score? Because I was going off of the score that I got in my early 20s. And I saw, how did you score on this IQ test? An IQ score over 140 indicates that you're a genius or nearly a genius, while 120 to 140 is classified as very superior intelligence. And then 110 to 119, so that's the realm that I fall in, is superior intelligence, while 90 to 109 is normal or average intelligence. So I'm literally right above the threshold of average intelligence. So it's not like I'm super smart. I am, you could say, bright, but not super smart. But still, I think that, again, in my opinion, the genius comes more so with the innovation and the creativity. Check out my poetry. You know, the way that I use wordplay, figurative language, I attribute that to the way that my brain is wired. That's why I'm so good with figurative language and with creating the poems that I create. And this is why I've always loved writing and language and words and word play. So that's where I think for me, the genius comes in. I think it's rather than about IQ, literally about innovation. Look at Bill Gates. He created Microsoft. You know, Albert Einstein came up with so many different things. It's just like the innovation of the brain. It's like the mad scientist or the mad genius type of thing. And it's, again, not necessarily an IQ thing as much as it is an innovation thing. Anyway, so let me just show y'all what I found though as it pertains to ADHD and Asperger's in these people. So with Elon Musk, as you saw, because I kind of went off on a tangent, I didn't stay and focus on the fact that they said he also has ADHD traits. That was the ADD kicking in just there, by the way. Anyways, with him, you know, he hasn't, from what I can see, been diagnosed with ADHD. But from analysis, people assume that he might have that as well because he has a lot of those traits. But remember, there's an overlap as well. So that doesn't necessarily mean that he has ADHD as well because there is an overlap in the symptoms. You know, I can acknowledge that. But he likely has it, you know? He likely does have ADHD as well. It's a common comorbidity, like I said. So let me go into the next thing now. So then I looked up Bill Gates to see if he had it. He actually has it. It's not even just an assumption or an analysis. He has ADHD. So not only does he have Asperger's, but he has ADHD as well. Bill Gates, the Microsoft founder, philanthropist, and billionaire, has talked about his struggles with ADHD. Bill Gates has spoken about how his symptoms contributed to him dropping out of Harvard to pursue starting Microsoft. So that's kind of relative to what happened to me. You know what I mentioned in my prior clip? I'm nowhere near as nowhere near. Excuse me, I'm stammering on my words. It's not the same thing. Obviously, he was in Harvard. You know, it's a big difference. But the point is, not doing well in school or as well as you can do because of that ADHD disability. You know, it has nothing to do with your IQ or your smarts and everything to do with the connectivity of your brain and that lack of dopamine, that lack of motivation or that lack of reward. And so this is why oftentimes you can see people with ADHD, if they're not aware of it, they might not do well in school. But if you have Asperger's and ADHD together, that tends to help because I noticed that Asperger's can offset the ADHD. But in his case, he dropped out of school and ended up creating Microsoft. You know, that's a big deal. But he has ADHD. He has ADHD and Asperger's as well. So another one of those people that has those two disorders. So then you can see in the picture, they don't have a picture of Bill Gates. They have a picture of Albert Einstein. There's a reason why, because he was assumed to have both as well. You know, and unlike Bill Gates and Elon Musk, I don't think he was ever diagnosed with either. So basically in the mental health community, just based off of analysis on what they know of Albert Einstein, they have basically come to the conclusion that he likely had Asperger's and or ADHD. So in my prior videos, I've shared several videos where I showed that they say that he had Asperger's. But when I typed it in, I found two different things. So first I tried typing in, did Albert Einstein have ADD or ADHD? And this is what they said. Although it can't be proven, many scholars and historians believe that Einstein, one of the greatest minds of all time, had ADHD. And then if you look at the article above that, you can see, was Albert Einstein autistic, dyslexic, dyspraxic, or have ADHD? Because it's connected, you know? This is why you're seeing autistic and ADHD there in the same line, and this is why they're trying to figure out which one he had. And so you can see they said experts believe that Einstein had ADHD because he was as disorganized and forgetful as he was insightful and intelligent. Other traits that other traits he was dot dot dot. So that's one of the theories, that he had ADHD, but another one is that he had autism. So I typed in, does Albert Einstein have Asperger's? It says, according to Michael Fitzgerald, professor of psychiatry at Trinity College in Dublin, many geniuses, including Albert Einstein, Beethoven, Mozart, and more, all had Asperger syndrome. Asperger syndrome is a high-functioning disorder on the autism spectrum. So this is the analysis. You know, many believe he had ADHD, many believe he had Asperger's, or both. You know, so there's some sort of connection there with that, with the innovation and the having these different disorders. And then also too, if you think about Emily Dickinson, you know, I looked her up. Let me see. I don't think I took a screenshot of it. Let me look her up again just to show you guys. And I don't want this video to be too long, so let me try to hurry up. I just wanted to add this clip in to that prior clip. But Emily Dickinson, again, like Albert Einstein is another one that was never professionally diagnosed in person. But historians, you know, and people in the mental health community, based off of analysis, have come to the conclusion that she had Asperger's. But when I typed in, did she have ADHD? Sorry, that's still up in my search. Let me type it in right now, as a matter of fact. Emily Dickinson ADHD. You can see, did Dickinson have ADHD? They're the daydreamer, the serene, lost in their thoughts. Emily Dickinson, kind of ADHD. She had the great line, I heard a fly buzz when I dot. The Emily Dickinson poem is a perfect representation of the atypical brain and thinking. Number Emily Dickinson, number ADHD quotes, number ADHD, number ADHD go. Was Emily Dickinson epileptic? No. So I didn't really, when I typed in ADHD, because I do remember looking this up, I didn't see that she had ADHD. They definitely know she was neurodivergent. But mainly what I see is that she had Asperger's. But I do also see ADHD being mentioned with her because she was an avid daydreamer. Let me see this. Whoa, look at this. ADHD truth. Famous historical ADHDers. Ooh, the fact that this popped up, I'm assuming that her name is likely on this list. Dang, I'm so mad it's not showing clearly. Let me see if I can get it to show clearly. Yep, her name is on the list. You see that? It's very blurred out. But her name is right there on the list. Right there. I don't know if y'all can see that. Although it's blurred out. I don't know why it's not showing clearly. But it seems to me like they've kind of concluded with their analysis that she likely had ADHD and Asperger's. You know, before I was mainly seeing Asperger's. If you check out my part 1 Asperger's video, let me just go over there really quickly to YouTube. I don't think I have to, well, I might have to, because, you know, not all of you are familiar with all of my videos. And I'm aware of that. So this is why I like to bring things up. If you check out my part 1, the Asperger/music connection and taking a live Asperger's test on camera, you'll see that I shared a video, 25 most famous people with Asperger's, and Emily Dickinson was mentioned, you know? So they know for sure, well, they don't know for sure, but they definitely have concluded that she had Asperger's, but it seems to me like they also think she had ADHD, and actually I think they thought she had ADD, like what I have, the inattentive form. I don't think the hyperactivity was present, but she was an avid daydreamer, an avid reader, These are all things you can find typically in an ADD woman, as well as an Asperger woman. So let me type in Emily Dickinson Asperger's. How is it known that Emily Dickinson had Asperger's syndrome? You see that? So they definitely more so have concluded that she has Asperger's, but it seems to me like they've also um, came to the realization that she likely had ADD as well. So the inattentive form of ADHD. So history's 30 most famous people with autism, and you can see Emily Dickinson in her book writes on the spectrum how autism and Asperger's syndrome have influenced literary writing. Whoa. I didn't even know she wrote it. See, this is new to me. Look at this. So this is, I assume, how they knew that she had Asperger's for sure. I thought it was more like an Albert Einstein situation where she had never been actually diagnosed. Let me see. Let me see what this is really saying. History's 30 most famous people with autism. Though autism spectrum disorder did not become the mainstream diagnosis, it is today, until well into the 20th century. It is certainly not anything new. Indeed, history is full of people who many consider to be or have been somewhere on the autism spectrum, like 30 famous autistic people on this list. Okay, so it is what I thought, because I know from Emily Dickinson is from way back in the day, right? So I don't think they even knew about autism back then. So this is why I was confused. I was like, what? This is news to me. But I think that's not what that was. I think they're just writing about people on the spectrum. Famous people with autism: Dan Aykroyd, comedic actor; Hans Christian Andersen, and these seem to be the names that was in that 20 most famous people video that I shared. These are all of the names I'm seeing here. Children's author Benjamin Banneker, African American almanac author, surveyor, naturalist, and farmer; Susan Boyle, singer; Tim Burton, movie director; Lewis Carroll, author of Alice in Wonderland. Wow, some big people. And again, I attribute it, rather than a higher IQ, to being creative. That's where the genius comes in, because of the innovation of the Asperger ADHD mind. Henry Cavendish, scientist; Charles Darwin, naturalist, geologist, and biologist; Emily Dickinson, poet. I'm not going to read the whole list, but as you can see, they're just listing the people out, right? Let me get down to Emily Dickinson. 1830 to 1886. In her book, Writers on the Spectrum: How Autism and Asperger's Syndrome Have Influenced Literary Writing, academic Julie Brown includes classical poet Emily Dickinson. Okay, so that's the rest of the statement. I knew it couldn't be Emily writing that. I was like, huh? All right. Brown is part of a large group who believe Dickinson showed plenty of signs of being autistic, including writing poems that were extremely unconventional for her time period, living a reclusive lifestyle, getting along best with children. She wore white clothing almost exclusively and had a fascination with scented flowers, among other things. While Dickinson's biographer Lyndall Gordon insists that Dickinson's epilepsy is what made her so reclusive, medical professionals are quick to point out that those with autism have a much higher chance of also having epilepsy. Wow, so that's crazy. I didn't know that. Um, thank goodness that's not the case, with me. That's rough. I couldn't even imagine having to go through that, having epilepsy and autism, so also having that social ineptness and then dealing with the physical aspects of it, because remember, it's a neurological disorder. Both ADHD and Asperger's are neurological disorders. And I was even discussing the fact that back in the day with my anxiety in my early 20s, oftentimes my sister would have to drive me to the hospital because I would get so anxious that my hands started to cramp in. They would literally cramp into my chest and I couldn't unbend them. I mentioned that in which video did I talk about that in? My Asperger's part 2 video, I believe it was, that I talked about that. It was either the part 1 or the part 2 video. And so recently, when I was learning about having Asperger's, I was like, oh my God, this makes sense because it's a neurological disorder. I remember back then, my sister just eventually, once she realized it wasn't a life-threatening thing that was happening to me, she just used to just take me to the urgent care, and they would just make sure I was okay, check my vitals, They kept prescribing or trying to prescribe anxiety medicine to me, and I didn't want to take it. But they were telling me basically that I just have extreme anxiety. They were saying generalized anxiety, and that I was getting so anxious basically that I was losing oxygen, and that was what was causing my hands to cramp in. But they were also thinking it could have possibly been something neurological. And now that I'm learning about Asperger's, I'm realizing that likely it was something neurological. So that's crazy how that works, and how it's all connected. Anyway, so you can see that Emily Dickinson is presumed to have had Asperger's and possibly ADHD as well as Albert Einstein. So there's a connection between the two guys, more than just having overlapping or similar traits. There's actually a connection, as in many people have both disorders. It's a common comorbidity. So that's all I wanted to talk about, guys, and just share that with you guys and add that clip to my last clip. I just wanted to add this clip where I'm actually showing you some people other than myself that had or have both disorders, and discuss that a little bit. Anyways, thanks for tuning in. I'll talk to you all in the next one. Peace out.